J'ouvre maintenant la séance et j'ai besoin.
I call this meeting to order.
The bell are ringing. I would like to propose, with your permission, that we listen to our witnesses, then we would suspend to vote, and then we will come back. I would need a unanimous consent for that. Perfect. Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 30.
Welcome to meeting number 38 of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Pursuant to the motion adopted on November 25, 2025, the committee is resuming its study on the monitoring of the rehabilitation services contract awarded to PCVRS. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing order. Members can participate in person or members and witnesses can participate in person or on Zoom. I would like to remind everyone that you need to wait before speaking. If you are online, click on the microphone icon to activate your microphone and put yourselves on mute when you're not speaking.
We have our panel of witnesses for the PCVRS study. As an individual, Mr. Eric Villa by video conference, and from the Union of Veterans Affairs Employees, Mr. Toufik El Daher, Président National, et Martha Josephine, Case Manager and alternate Vice Presidents. So we do have bell ringing, so we will give you 5 minutes each, and then we will suspend, go vote, and then we'll come back for the rounds of questions. Mr. Villa, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good day to my fellow witnesses and the members of the committee. My name is Eric Villa, and I'm a kinesiologist with Lifemark Health Group. I have nearly 10 years of experience in the health and fitness industry, specializing in functional training, strength and conditioning, and high performance. I am accredited with the British Columbia Association of Kinesiologists and certified as a Workwell Functional Capacities Evaluator. Additionally, I currently serve as a reservist in the CAF with the 5th Field Artillery Regiment. This experience has both enhanced and offered me an opportunity for greater understanding of the challenges faced by veterans and members of the armed forces, both during their service and while seeking rehabilitation services. In my role as a kinesiologist, I provide exercise-based services aimed at improving my client's function. Some participants undergo a kinesiologist-led assessment to evaluate their current functional capabilities and limitations, which allows us to develop an appropriate rehabilitation plan. Given the unique circumstances that may bring a veteran into this program, the care that I provide is tailored to each participant, focusing on functional rehabilitation through guided movement and exercise. I address movement-related injuries and conditions within my clinical scope of practice, while clinical diagnoses are for the appropriate treating professionals to make. I collaborate with an interprofessional rehabilitation team that includes physiotherapists, psychologists, occupational therapists, and registered clinical counselors. Kinesiology plays an essential role in this therapeutic alliance. It's important for the committee to understand that our focus within the rehabilitation program is on providing function-based rehabilitation. This approach often differs from the more traditional diagnostic rehabilitation or assessments veterans may have experienced previously. Function-based rehabilitation aims to restore or improve independent functioning to the extent possible in their roles at home, in the community, and at work. As clinicians, we always have a duty to assess the participant's current functional state. This ensures we understand them holistically, tailor assessments and treatments appropriately, and avoid treatments that could be potentially cause further harm. In order to limit the number of new assessments a veteran has to experience and build upon existing information, we always encourage participants to share previous assessment reports with us should they consent to do so. To provide context, when a veteran is referred to the rehabilitation program, their VAC case manager identifies their eligible health problems. These are the specific areas we, as clinicians, are authorized to assess and address within their approved rehabilitation plan. While VAC's rehabilitation program is focused on these eligible conditions, we strongly encourage participants to continue receiving services from their existing providers for any non-eligible health problems. Those services would be outside of the rehabilitation program and covered by their Medivie Blue Cross benefits. This ensures comprehensive care while maintaining the program's specific mandate for functional rehabilitation. As an active reservist, I have the opportunity to serve my country. And as a kinesiologist, I have an opportunity to support those who have served by providing critical services through their rehabilitation journey. I've had the privilege of working alongside many wonderful and amazing veterans and have witnessed firsthand the benefits of this program. So thank you for your time and for the opportunity to share insights into the important work being done to support our Canadian veterans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Villa, and thank you for your service to Canada. I would like to invite Mr. El Daer for 5 minutes.
Chairperson, member of the committee. When we talk about the PCVRS contract, we are not simply talking about a service delivery model. This is a matter of trust, of expertise, and of responsibility toward our veterans. Since the implementation of the PCVRS contract, we have witnessed a fundamental and troubling shift in how rehabilitation services are delivered to our veterans. And this shift comes at the expense of those who know these veterans best, the case managers at Veterans Affairs Canada. These professionals are not interchangeable. They possess unique expertise, developed over years, at the very heart of the public system. They understand invisible injuries, trauma, and military realities. They do not simply manage files, they support lives. So let me ask a simple question. Why was this internal expertise pushed aside in favor of a privatized model? What we see on the ground today is clear. We see veterans lost in a fragmented system. We see inconsistent rehabilitation pathways. We see delays, duplication, and far too often a loss of trust. Meanwhile, case manager, the real experts, are relegated to an administrative coordination rather than professional intervention. This is a step backward, not progress. We were promised efficiency. We were promised improved accessibility. But what our members are seeing is increased complexity, diluted responsibility, and a loss of coherence in care. Let's be honest, when services are fragmented, it is the veterans who pay the price. I also want to highlight a reality that we cannot ignore. The employees of Veterans Affairs Canada are still there, every day, trying to make this model work. They absorb the problems. They compensate for the gaps. They strive to maintain the level of service our veterans deserve, despite the obstacles. But they should not have to fix a system that was poorly designed. This committee must ask fundamental question. Is this model truly putting veterans at the center of decision-making? Are we fully using the expertise that already exists within VAC? And most importantly, is this system actually better than the one we had before? Because today, everything indicates that the answer is no. Let me be clear. We are not here to defend the status quo. We are here to defend a fundamental principle. Veterans deserve the best possible service, not an administrative experiment. What we are asking for is reasonable, but urgent. Restore a central role for our case manager at Veterans Affairs Canada. Seriously consider not renewing the PCVRS contract and the fragmentation of services, and above all, listen to those of the front line, the employees of VAC and the veterans themselves. Because right now we risk losing something precious, a system built on expertise, human connection, and trust. And once that trust is broken, it is very difficult to rebuild. In conclusion, veterans deserve a system that is coherent, humane, and effective. and the employees of Veterans Affairs Canada are ready and able to be the foundation of such a system. This is why we are calling for the non-renewal of the current private contract and for the repatriation of rehabilitation services back into VAC as they were before. The expertise already exists with Veterans Affairs Canada, and it must be fully utilized rather than outsourced. I therefore invite ACVA committee to seriously consider the issues raised today and to work with us to improve this system in the best interest of those who have served our country. Merci, thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now suspend. We'll see you shortly. Donc, nous allons maintenant reprendre.
We are going to resume the meeting.
We will start with our first round of questions. Each member will have 6 minutes, and it will start with Mr. Richards for 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate your testimony today. I've got several questions for you. I guess I'd start with this. This committee back, I guess about 4 years ago, right just before the implementation of this, did a study and made a lot of recommendations about the concerns we were hearing at that time, including from the union at the time, of course from veterans and their families and others as well. But my sense is that essentially that report and the recommendations it made were just ignored. And I'd like to kind of ask you a few questions about some of the specific recommendations and kind of get your sense as whether that's the case and whether there's still some work that needs to be done to improve that. I think the first one is just around confusion. Like there was a lot of, during that study at that time, there was a lot of talk about the confusion about what the roles were. And you addressed it a bit today, right? I think you're unhappy with how it all shook out, but there seemed to be at the time a lot of confusion about what the roles would be. And I would say that what we've heard during this study from veterans is that there still seems to be a lot of confusion. They say that they used to be able to just talk to a case manager and they could solve their issues for them, or at least try. And they feel like that's no longer the case. Would you agree with that? And would you agree that there's still a lot of confusion here about what the roles are and what the roles should be?
Oui, absolument.
Yes, absolutely. Our veterans are lost. They don't know who to turn to. Should they call Veterans Affairs, their case manager, LifeMark, PCVRS? The system is too vast, and our veterans need stability. They need support. They don't need to repeat their stories 3-4 times. That causes them to revisit their trauma. We've said this to upper management, to the deputy minister. We've sent solutions, but they don't seem to understand the reality that we are seeing on the field. There's a complete disconnect.
So you say you've sent some solutions. What are those solutions?
Mais dans le fond,
one of the solutions is to recognize the essential role of case managers and to give them that task back. Because yes, they currently have a role, and I put that in quotation marks, but they are often pressured to sign an agreement with LifeMark, even though ethically, and these people have studied health and they have university degrees, they follow a code of ethics, and they feel that they are stuck, that they have to accept those plans. And one solution would be to give the caseloads back to the case managers at Veterans Affairs and stop dealing with an external company. So those are the kind of solutions that we've proposed, but the employer is really focused on PCVRS. And I believe that our employees, our members, they don't feel supported in that. They feel left behind by the employer, who is focused on the RSS, the specialists, instead of on their own case managers.
And the other area that we heard a lot about at the time, and that there was several recommendations in that report about, centered around like communication and consultation and the lack thereof, whether it be with the union, whether it be with veterans and their families, whether it be with Veterans Affairs employees, whether it be with service providers. We also continue to hear those issues 4.5 years later. Would you agree that lack of consultation and communication is still a problem? I mean, I think I asked that in light of the cuts that were made to the Bureau of Pension Advocates, and I know some of the concerns that you raised about not being consulted or communicated with about those changes. I guess I want your thoughts on that consultation and communication piece and how important it is, and whether you think it's still an issue that's lacking from Veterans Affairs right now.
Mais merci pour la question. Est-ce qu'on est consulté?
Thank you for the question. Are we being consulted? And I'll answer frankly, no. They meet with us. I've met with the deputy minister I meet with her every month, and I can meet with her every time there's an emergency. She's very open to that. But regarding the PCVRS contract, she's being replaced by Ms. Pamela Harrison. I've met with her on a monthly basis, but the issue is that in speaking with the employer, when we flag an issue with the contract, they ask us for names of veterans and specific cases, but the issue is we're not dealing with specific cases. We're dealing with a structural problem. There's a structural problem with PCVRS, and the issue won't be solved. The employer wants us to solve those issues, but they want us to give them names and cases. If not, they won't move on. They won't move forward. They don't understand the structural problem with the contract.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the frankness and your time today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. For 6 minutes, Mr. Casey.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here with us today. I'm going to stay with the union and Mr. Eldaher. Sir, I can tell you that at the national headquarters for Veterans Affairs, there was much joy on your election, as you know. Can you describe for me what is the state of communication and the state of cooperation both between you as a newly elected president and management, and you and the union at the national headquarters?
Yeah.
Your members.
Yeah. Merci pour la question, j'apprécie.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Since my election in 2023, I have brought my positive energy. I like working with other people, and I'll be honest, I have a good relationship with the employer. We communicate very well, whether it be with the HR representative, with the deputy minister, the new deputy minister. We get along, but we don't always agree on issues on the contract, but that doesn't mean that we don't get along. I will share issues with the contract. But honestly, I do have good communication with upper management at VAC. There's transparency. We are able to say things truthfully. Do the issues get solved? Unfortunately, no, because it's very political. When we're asking for funding for the Bureau of Pensions Advocates, it's political. They would have had to ask for additional funding. All that to say that we do have good communication, but there could be more. But yes, thank you for the question. I think I responded.
Merci pour la réponse.
Thank you for that response. It's good to hear.
C'est que
I know that you are against a third-party service provider, is that it? No. We're asking for things to go back to how they were. There used to be a rehabilitation program made by case managers, and they were paid by Blue Cross. Whereas now, the case manager doesn't know where to turn. They don't know what their responsibilities are. They're confused. Their role is not entirely clear with this new contract. And they're afraid. They're afraid that in the coming years, that the case managers will be replaced by the RSS because their roles are quite similar. So that is a significant concern that they have.
we would have Blue Cross back in the picture, playing the role they did before. So we would switch from one third-party provider back to the one that was there before PCVRS. Is that what I'm to understand?
Moi, dans le fond, mon rôle idéal, moi, je travaille pour...
I've been working for Veterans Affairs since 2003. There was an authorization center. They were responsible for the 15 care programs under VAC, and it was privatized through the Blue Cross, as you know. What I'm proposing is that we put an end to the contract with PCVRS and LifeMark, and that we give that back to the Blue Cross, because that way our veterans can deal with the service providers that they choose, because that's not the case now. The company puts pressure on veterans so that they choose one of their service providers, and veterans cannot continue with their own providers. My ideal solution would be to come back to having VAC in Charlottetown with the authorization center that was responsible for dental, pharmacy, and unfortunately that was all privatized. Thank you. There's an issue of continuity for veterans who are in the rehabilitation process. And before you answer, in 2021, there were 600 clinics, and now there are 1,200 clinics. Your solution to put an end to the contract would require spaces for the 23,000 veterans who have received service since that time, and we'd need to find a solution to replace those 1,200 clinics. Is that doable in such a short timeline? Putting an end to this program when there is a lack of continuity. I would be ready to take the risk. You need some political courage. Our veterans need to be treated properly. The contract does not fully take care of our vets. Abandoning one vet means it's a failure. Thank you very much. Now for 6 minutes, Ms. Gaudreau.
Madame Gaudreau will address you in French, so just make sure that you... je vais vous parler français, Monsieur Villa.
So I'll be speaking in French just to ensure that you are hearing me in the language of your choice. Are you hearing interpretation? Great. Ms. Gaudreau, you have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. What was the choice for privatizing? Were you given any information? Any rationale? Unfortunately, no. The union learned about it through its members and through the news. That's how we heard that the rehabilitation was going to be privatized, because before it was external. But for physical and psychological care, we weren't aware. So you were given the fait accompli in a way. If we were to go back to how things were, even if we were to have an internal model, there would need to be some changes. And so what changes would have been needed? I think that one of the issues that has persisted at VAC for years has been the lack of resources. 2 deputy ministers ago, we were promised 25 cases per case manager. Unfortunately, we are far from that. The employer said that on March 23rd that they were close, but from what I've heard, there are some that have 40, 45 cases, so we're far from that. So you need additional resources at VAC. We need new case managers. And the role of VAC and the role of the external company, those roles need to be defined, because there's Blue Cross, there's LifeMark, and there's AVAC, and we're confused. Imagine for veterans. When we talk about service providing, we understand that we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and currently it's not a strength for the current government. I'm concerned that we're not focused on the people who are impacted by this. Are we too focused on the administrative side and quotas?
Pardon. Il y a beaucoup
There is a big administrative burden. I've been at VAC for 24 years. They've been saying that they want to simplify and lower the administrative burden, but unfortunately, things haven't changed. And it's not true that case managers don't do any administrative work. That's not true. They are afraid, they are anxious, because there's a need for additional resources, but the employer is awarding more and more to PCVRS. So this causes more anxiety to our members. They don't know what's going to happen to them in the coming years. Were you told that there was going to be an impartial assessment? Because the contract is up for renewal soon. So we're wondering whether or not things have started. Will there be any accountability? When will it be renewed? We had a national meeting with the employer on May 28th in Charlottetown in person. We were told that in the weeks to come, they were going to see who was going to carry out that independent review. The contract expires at the end of the year, but we all know the answer. We all know what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that the contract is going to be renewed. They invested $570 million with the possible extension of 2 years. So you're saying that choices are being made because of the investment and are not focused on services. My office has become an office for Service Canada and the CRA, in a way. I agree, and I'm going to say what I said earlier. The experts are at VAC. These the RSS, they don't have the necessary studies or background in order to help veterans with trauma. Our case managers need to call the RSS to tell them how to speak to a veteran that they're going to be calling. It makes no sense. Things aren't uniform. No, they don't have the same qualifications, the same studies. They focus on the administrative, and they're treated the same as our case managers, and that's unacceptable. I have about 20 seconds left, so we could talk about the possibility of doing a 180-degree change. Thank you, Ms. Gaudreau.
Second round for 5 minutes, Mrs. Wagenthal.
Thank you so much, Chair. The PCVRS contract costs taxpayers over $600 million for 5 years. You could put through a lot of training for a number of new case managers with that kind of money. Yet the LifeMark officials told this committee just a couple of months ago that the program is still in its infancy, and that's why there were issues. So, you know, I don't know if you're aware that LifeMark is responsible for determining and signing up providers through PCVRS. Loblaws, Mr. Galen, purchased LifeMark for $845 million and are now a major footprint in this business of physiotherapy and rehabilitation. So there are two kinds of providers I have just learned: affiliate and out-of-network providers. So I had some providers in my office a while back, part of a big clinic, and I said, oh, okay, so you're all set up there. Are you part of PCVRS? They said no. I said, why? They said 2 reasons. We have so many veterans and responders that come to us. We have people that we take care of. The second reason was the contract, because the contract required them to sign a first right of refusal to Lifemark, so that if they did want to sell their business, they had to notify Lifemark, put it in writing, and propose, and then Lifemark has 30 days to respond. It's all right in the contract, which I have. And then during that time, they try to come to an agreement. If no agreement is signed within 30 days, the affiliate is free to look for other buyers. For 180 days, the affiliate can market and sell the business to a third party, but only on the terms that are the same as those offered to Lifemark. The third party buyer cannot get a better deal than Lifemark. So I don't see a service here that is set up with veterans as the priority. Veterans Transition Network, same thing. They signed up as an out-of-network provider. They got a call finally 2 years later saying because they were out-of-network, they couldn't give them any clients. Is this what you hear from veterans as case managers? What's your perspective on that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, as a case manager in London, Ontario, my colleagues and I regularly see the impact of veterans not being able to select their provider of choice. So they may be working with a clinic or a specific individual physiotherapist, and they are not able to continue working with that individual once they're on the rehab program with PCVRS. So there's a lack of choice there, and it is really impacting their recovery and their wellness. So that I consistently hear that concern from clients, and that it is an ongoing issue.
We had a stakeholder testifying yesterday that is part of Lifemark, and they indicated that no, they can use their previous provider in a parallel way. Can you explain that to me? Because how do you pay 2 different providers meeting your need that you supposedly are saying that this is what I need?
Yeah, and this speaks to the confusion that veterans experience. So they can access services through PCVRS for their eligible health conditions. So the health conditions that they are on the rehabilitation program for. Other health issues, they would, as you say, in parallel, seek assistance and treatment through their A-line benefits and also through the public service health care plan, possibly. So it becomes very fragmented, and it's very confusing for clients.
Right, because the impression that I got when he was saying, oh, no, they can have that care parallel, and I said, well, you're providing the same service from 2 different places. It was not clarified that it isn't for the same injury. Okay, so if they came and said, well, yes, you have that there, but I have this provider over here that does that, that's who I want to work with. They don't have that option if they are assessed and put through Lifemark. Otherwise, they lose their IRB and get removed from the program. Do you hear that as well?
There are concerns that we do see where clients are, if they choose to not pursue treatment through PCVRS, their IRB benefits, their income replacement benefits, can be terminated for what we call non-participation. So that is an aspect that is very concerning.
Okay. I have 20 seconds. We had a gal talk about her knee injury, and she had help through PCVRS. And then they couldn't help her anymore, they said, until she could have a knee transplant. She was too young. Care ended. Is that what would happen under the other program? If you need to continue that care until you can have a knee transplant, would you not think?
Yeah, you go ahead.
No, you can't.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yes or no?
I'm at the 5-second extension. Yes or no, if you want to answer, and then I'll move on.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. At least, sorry, thank you very much. Now for 5 minutes, Madame Auguste va aussi vous adresser en français.
Ms. Auguste will also be asking her questions in French. So, Ms. Auguste, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. My question is for Mr. Villa. The PCVRS program seeks to have a multidisciplinary approach offered to veterans. We've heard the importance of ensuring good coordination, and it's difficult to ensure that with professionals on a given file. So in practice, how do you focus on collaboration between physical health professionals and mental health professionals and ensure good coordination of services?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, I'm fortunate that the clinic and space that I work in is down the hall from many of the other practitioners and clinicians that I work alongside with. So, physiotherapists, psychologists, clinical counselors, and such. In order to maintain, I guess, like a continuity or an easy transition between the different aspects of rehabilitation. A lot of the time, it's a simple walking down the hall, walking the client to their next appointment with the following clinician to give a quick debrief of this is what's happening. This is the stuff that we've talked about. Obviously, as a kinesiologist, my scope is quite narrow in terms of just the physical functional side of it. But alongside of that, through conversations with a client during a session, they often start to share life. They often start to share their experiences, and that stuff. Although it's not something that I necessarily as a clinician can tackle, I can pass that along to the appropriate clinicians. If the client allows me to, as well as we do a lot of charting and keeping record of the things that we treat our clients with. So for myself, the physical exercises, but also the subjective things. So the things that the client shares, whether how they're feeling, things outside of the program that are affecting their life. Again, perhaps not something that I myself can treat, but within an interdisciplinary setting, our other clinicians can perhaps tackle those at the same time.
Merci. Donc, vous avez parlé que vous avez la chance d'être...
You mentioned that you are close to other servicers, and that's not the case for all veterans. The committee heard many concerns regarding access to services depending on one's region or the availability of professionals. For example, veterans in a rural area might have more difficulties. Given your experience, how do those barriers limit access to services for veterans, and how could we improve that?
Again, thank you for the question. It is a very relevant question for sure. The clinic that I work at, for context, is in Victoria, BC, right next, fairly close to the naval base, CFB at Esquimalt. So many of our veterans that we work with come from there or the Air Force up the island. But there are also many veterans that choose to live in rural areas for various reasons, whatever it is. And definitely that can be a hindrance to their participation in the program. An example I can think of is I have a number of clients who I've worked with in the past or currently who live up the Malahat, which on Vancouver Island is a highway they have to drive about an hour or so, kind of on the side of a mountain. Nothing scary, but it is quite a distance, quite a travel for the city that we're in. And a lot of the times there are clients who are unable to do that, whether due to time constraints, whether due to financial restrictions, perhaps even weather-based. We offer services virtually to try to reach and provide to those veterans, to those clients. So virtual kinesiology, virtual mental health support, even virtual physiotherapy. I do recognize, though, that sometimes there is a bit of a gap between in-person versus virtual, right? We're fortunate to have a technology like this to be able to converse and to be able to provide these services, but often, especially for services such as physiotherapy, where it's much more tactile, much more hands-on, it can be difficult sometimes to serve our veterans in that way.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Madame Auguste.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Auguste. For 2.5 minutes, Ms. Gaudreau. Thank you, Chair. When we talk about contracts, we focus on different issues. And I am saddened to hear that veterans are being set aside if they refuse to go with PCVRS. A department is supposed to offer services to Canadians. Expertise can be developed, and they have control of what can be offered. And so these departments need to be accountable. What is there to learn from the whole situation with LifeMark? What you said regarding the department is true. I am proud to work for Veterans Affairs. I've been there for 24 years, and yes, I work for the union now, but I had a lot of pride. We had great values, and that's a feeling that employees have, and that's why we're sad to see what's happening with the contract, because it's truly the veterans who are paying the price. What's happening with LifeMark, and when there are issues, access issues, or veterans don't know who to reach out to, what happens? They stop knocking on the doors. They stop asking for services because they are tired of the administrative burden, having to repeat what they've been through every time they have to speak to someone new. And they are re-traumatized countless times. That's what's happening, and we're losing veterans, I'm certain. But I am confident that we will try to find a solution with Veterans Affairs, but it can't happen with only Veterans Affairs. We need to work with the government and the Prime Minister, and there needs to be funding and of course, people here as well. We are going to try to find solutions, but things aren't going well. We need political will, yes, and we need to fix things. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Richards for 5 minutes.
Sure, thanks. In reflecting on the conversation that you and I had and that you had with Mr. Casey earlier, I kind of think what I was hearing there was that there was some communication that's been occurring, but in the sense of like, we'll sit down in the same room with you, kind of a communication, but not in the sense of like, we'll actually listen to your concerns and try and do something about them. Is that a fair assessment of kind of what we've seen here? It's like yeah, we'll sit down. We're always willing to have a meeting, but then the meeting ends and the action isn't taken and the concerns aren't addressed and dealt with. Is that like your advice isn't being taken, I guess? Is that a fair assessment or?
Quand, exemple, qu'on est capable.
If we can share a specific case, then the department will fix the problem. But there are so many issues. We can say to them that they have to stop putting pressure on case managers to accept an unacceptable plan, but then they want to have the name on the file. And no, we're talking about this overarching issue. And there aren't concrete examples, but they can't solve that because they are always asking for specific cases, and it's not on a case-by-case basis that we're going to fix a structural issue.
That's exactly what I was referring to. Like, I mean, it's great to be able to deal with the specific cases, but it's the systemic issues that you're talking about, and those aren't being addressed. And is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think that leads me to kind of the other thing I wanted to ask a little bit about, which is, when you appeared before another parliamentary committee a while back, I think in the spring, earlier in the spring, you talked about the effects of the cuts at Bureau of Pension Advocates, and then the minister has since sort of made a claim that's to the contrary. Her claim is that no, in fact, these aren't cuts at all. And I guess I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that because, on one hand, we're hearing, no, there's no cuts here. And you're telling us, no, there absolutely is cuts. And in fact, I think you use the words devastating cuts. So I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that. Like, are these cuts and what's the effects of them?
Mais moi, je vous le dis, là, il y a eu des coupures.
There were cuts. There were many employees who left. They kept some, maybe 7 or 8. We don't know how they were chosen, but they kept 7 or 8 employees. But it's going to have an impact. And what's that impact? Well, hearings for VAC, for our veterans, there are delays, month-long delays, 2,500 files that are still waiting. This is going to have an impact on our veterans. I think in the coming months, VAC will have to rehire people. They will not be able to respond in a timely manner. And I'm talking about months, 6 months that our veterans are waiting. And there were cuts, real cuts, in a lot of regions, including Edmonton, where there were a lot of cuts.
I've heard, veterans saying that they're even being told the Bureau can't even take on their case. They just don't have the people. So, when you talk about delay itself can be denial. And that's, I think, what we're seeing there at the very least. And then when they're not able to have an advocate to work for them, when you talk to the organizations like the Legion, they're saying they were already planning on having to hire more people to do the job that should have been being done by other people because they have to fill it because the government's made these cuts, right? So it's a pretty big struggle. Let me ask you, perhaps, Ms. Josephine, in terms of service providers, and the access to them. A lot of veterans say when they're in more remote areas or further from a major center, they're not really able to get, it might be an hour drive in some cases to go see one of the providers they're being pushed to by the PCVRS system, or when they've got sort of a smaller provider that they've worked with before, or something that's a bit more tailored to their specific needs, and they're being cut off from those kinds of things. Can you just speak to that? Is that something you're seeing as well? And what kind of impacts does that have when a trusted provider that they're able to work with and they're no longer able to do that? What does that do for a veteran when they're down that road?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Services in remote areas is a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And we are seeing clients that have a chosen provider that they've worked with for some time and are not able to access services through that provider if they're not willing to be on board with PCVRS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Clark, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here this afternoon, for indulging us through our votes and so on. Appreciate it. Mr. Vila, I wanted to ask you, sir, if I could. My understanding is that, in addition to being a kinesiologist, you also are a reservist. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and how long have you been a reservist?
I've been a reservist for just under a year.
Okay, and in that case, I think you're unique in a very good way, because actually we've heard over the course of this study and in other studies we've done at this committee that one of the issues we often hear from veterans is that they feel like when they're dealing with the department or whatever the case might be, that the person they're dealing with doesn't necessarily understand them as veterans. They don't understand the military. They don't understand the culture. And that can mean a whole bunch of different things, right? So I'm curious, in your experience thus far, and I know that you've just been a reservist for a year, but I'm sure in that period of time, how, in your view, has your work and experience as a reservist helped you in your work, obviously particularly dealing with veterans in your clinic?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It has helped quite immensely, especially on the relational side, from clinician to client. It's actually one of the reasons that I decided to work with this specific LifeMark clinic. But being so close to the military base, I knew that they did work with PCVRS and veterans, and obviously as a reservist, that's quite close to home in my heart. Yeah, I find having that shared experience with veterans, that perhaps I'm not the same rank, same trade, same branch, but I understand even just a little bit of that side of them, that window of their experience. It's allowed me to even, like I said, just connect relationally with them, which often, as a kinesiologist, we're getting people to move their bodies in ways that they don't want to, right? With physical pain, with the other loads and mental and emotional things that they're carrying as well. So often they're quite physically guarded. But I have found that, sharing that information that, yes, I am a reservist. I'm not saying that I'm better than you or know exactly what you're experiencing, but I can understand a little bit of what you've gone through. and has allowed them to experience a space where they feel safe and maybe a little bit more understood than other spaces for someone who hasn't experienced the CAF.
Right. So it's not necessarily that it changes your approach or the work you're doing. It's kind of the ultimate icebreaker and a great way to build trust and camaraderie. Would that be a fair way to summarize it?
That would be, yes. Yeah. It is a great way to, like you said, break that ice. I tend to not open with that line of, hey, I'm also a serving member, because I also recognize that some individuals have had not so pleasant experiences with the military, right? But building that clinician-client relationship, using that as not a tool to manipulate, but a tool to enhance that rehabilitation relationship can be quite useful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service and your work that you're doing with veterans all the time. Appreciate it. Monsieur Eldahar, I just wanted to ask you a question, if I could. One of the hardest parts, I think, of this study and all the studies that we do is trying to find the balance between the stories and the experiences that come to us from veterans, which are foundational and I think should be the core of so much of the work we do, and then also kind of the broader policy, data, scientific, if I can say that, implications of what we try to do. So in your understanding, or are you aware of any kind of large-scale data collection or effectiveness study or work that's been done on the PCVRS work, so we can really kind of, like, as I say, balance out the experiences of the veterans with some kind of systematic approach as well?
Il y a peut-être eu une étude.
What I can say, and what I've heard from my members throughout the country, and I do speak to a lot of them, they don't have the knowledge of what our veterans and their families are going through. They don't have that expertise. When we're hired at VAC, when I was hired in 2003, we had months of training. I was a service agent for veterans. So you can imagine all of the training that we receive in order to take care of our veterans. And these RS, or the service providers at PCVRS, they have maybe a week of training, and that's it. They don't have expertise with veterans. And the employer confirmed that. They don't receive as much training as us. Does that mean that they're not competent? I'm not attacking them. I just want our vets to receive the best services possible. I'm not here to speak against anyone. I just want to support veterans and members. Thank you very much. And thank you for always looking at me. I do try to maintain everyone's time.
5 minutes. I want to make sure that our witnesses are comfortable to stay. I know, so what we'll do is we'll go 2 minutes, and 1 minute for Madame Gaudreau. So Mr. Viersen for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Eldahar, could you just state clearly for the record that it sounds like to me that you're recommending not renewing the PCVRS contract? Could you just state that clearly?
De ce que j'entends de mes membres,
From what I'm hearing from my members, yes. We are asking that the contract not be renewed and to give the responsibility back to case managers as was done before.
It sounds like to me the challenge that we're facing is that it seems like PCVRS has been using the government funding to build an empire of clinics across the country, rather than focus on serving members. They have been focused on building an empire. And that's not a problem to do. It just is a very frustrating thing that we have this, like, it seems like there's a exclusivity clause in this contract around. Now, we've been assured that that doesn't exist. Can you confirm or deny around this exclusivity? How does that work with the PCVRS? And I'm sorry, you got less than 1 minute to kind of explain that.
mais moi, dans le fond, la seule chose que je peux dire par rapport
The only thing I can say it has to do with the exclusivity of providers. Our veterans often have to deal with the LifeMark provider. They can't go with their own. So when we're talking about exclusivity, yes, in most cases.
Part of the contract. You don't.
Je ne sais pas. Mais je peux vous revenir là.
I could come back to you on that. I could send it in, my response.
Enforcing it as if it is.
Oui.
Okay.
Eux autres disent que non. Je les ai écoutés, moi. Ils disent que non. Mais la réalité.
They're saying no, but the reality is that veterans don't have a choice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vierson. Madame Gaudreau, pour 1 minute. It's going to close.
On veut tous.
We all want our veterans to have access to services. What are we missing? What do we need to develop our internal capacity? Especially with 30 seconds. Yes, that is a difficult question, but what's missing is to go back to the human element, to how we treat our veterans, and to giving psychological and physical care to a multi-billion-dollar company, that's not serving our veterans. It's not with such a company that we're going to support our veterans. We need to give the power back to our internal case managers and fix what was missing with the Blue Cross. And really, will we be able to fix everything? No, but things will be markedly better than how they are now.
Merci beaucoup. And for the last 2 minutes, Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to you, Mr. Eldaher. In your opening remarks, you indicated that the question should be asked whether we are better off and that everything indicates no. When you say everything indicates no, have you conducted any surveys, obtained any empirical evidence, or is that based solely on anecdotes? Sorry. Could we have Ms. Wagenthal take the stand?
I would.
Seems she'd like to testify.
Can I?
You've been extremely, please, let's be respectful.
Oui.
There was a question asked.
Moi, dans le fond,
Mr. Casey, I base myself on what I'm hearing from my members throughout the country and surveys done by Veterans Affairs. 72% or 74% of veterans are satisfied with PCVRS, but I think that's not enough. What are we doing with the 26 or the 24% that are remaining? So when I say no, and you understand that not everything is going poorly. We just want to solve the issues so that our veterans are treated as they deserve.
Prior to the PCVRS contract, the time from intake to treatment was 224 days. Now it's 110. When we revert, are you satisfied with the time from intake to treatment of 224 days?
moi, honnêtement, là, les
Honestly, I'm very careful when we talk about numbers because I could share a lot of stories on statistics and how you can make stats say what you want. I know that there are veterans who have been accepted through PCVRS who are waiting 2 to 3 months. So there are issues. I'm not saying that everything is going wrong, Mr. Casey. There are issues and we want to solve them. I want to work with the department. I want to work with everyone here because we are working for our veterans. That's why we're here. You are the Veterans Affairs Committee. It's our internal employees who are the best place to help our veterans. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you to the witnesses for their flexibility. I know we had to start late.
Much again for joining us. Thank you for your service. À Madame Josephine and Monsieur Eldert, merci beaucoup. Nous allons.
Thank you very much. We are going to suspend just for a few minutes because this brings us to the end of our study on the monitoring of the rehabilitation services contract awarded to PCVRS. We're going to suspend for about 10 minutes, and then we are going to continue in camera. Thank you.
you.